Good evening. This is the April 6, 2022 Seminole County Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. My name is Steve Smith, chairman for tonight's meeting. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. This board is a 7-member board appointed by the Board of County Commissioners. A quorum has been established to hold tonight's meeting. Public hearing items acted upon by this board are referred to the County Commission for further consideration. Board members present tonight are Richard Jarman, Dan Lopez, and Bob Turnage, and myself. Staff present tonight is Rebecca Hammock. Where are you? Oh, she's hiding in the back. Mary Markowitz, Paul Chipok, he's hiding in the back, and Bill White, you got up front, and Doug Robinson, principal planner, Annie Silloway, and Tammy Brushwood. Tonight's meeting will go... I forgot.
And just for the record, yep, Desmond Morrell.
You didn't get on the list,
County Attorney's Office. No, I slid in a little late.
This is the A-list up here, you realize that. Tonight's meeting will go as follows. Staff will introduce the item. The applicant will present the item. Audience members wishing to speak will then be heard. Please make sure you complete a comment card and give it to the clerk. Comment cards are located in the lobby. Audience speakers should restrict their comments to information directly related to the item being heard. Audience speakers will have 3 minutes to speak, or 6 minutes if representing a group. When called, speakers should approach the microphone, provide their name and address for the record. The board may ask questions of the speaker. After all speakers have been heard, public comment will be closed. The applicant will be given a chance for rebuttal. Any items shown, such as video, presentation, pictures, or maps, must be left with the clerk for the public record. Items shown from electronic devices should be emailed to the clerk. A motion will be made and seconded. Board discussion may occur and conclude with a vote. I will request a roll call vote for any split votes. The first item on the agenda is proof of publication. Do I have a motion?
Yeah, I move to approve.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next approval is of the minutes of the previous meeting.
Move that we approve the minutes of the last meeting. Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. Vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to technical review item number 1, Cove at Riverbend subdivision, preliminary subdivision plan presented by Annie Solway. Good evening.
Good evening. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. My name is Annie Silloway. I'm with Development Services. I will be presenting Cove at Riverbend PSP. The applicant is requesting approval for the Cove at Riverbend preliminary subdivision plan on 9.60 acres located on the east side of Cameron Avenue and west of Celery Avenue, approximately a quarter-mile west of Lake Mary Boulevard. The PSP is proposing 38 single-family residential lots with a maximum density of 2.22 dwelling units per net buildable acre, with a minimum lot size of 8,400 square feet. The PSP complies with all the conditions of the Cove at Riverbend PD Final Development Plan Development Order in Chapter 35 of the Seminole County Land Development Code. All internal roads will be public and utilities will be provided by City of Sanford. Public access is via Cameron Avenue, and the final off-site road improvements will be evaluated and determined during final engineering. Staff recommends approval of the Cove at Riverbend PSP as requested.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Annie?
No.
Hearing none. Thanks, Annie.
Okay.
Any board discussion?
Applicant,
Not
oh,
a
okay.
technical review.
Oh, okay. I'll make a motion when you're ready.
I'm ready.
All right, I move we approve the preliminary subdivision plan for the Cove at Riverbend subdivision.
Second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we'll hear a public hearing item, Howell Estates, number 1 lift station improvement rezone. Again, Annie?
Hi, good evening. I'll be presenting Howell Branch number 1 lift station rezone. This is a request for rezone from R1A, single-family dwelling, to PLI, public lands and institutions, for the proposed relocation of a county-owned lift station on approximately 1.56 acres, located northeast of Princess Gate Boulevard and Dyke Road. The applicant is requesting a rezone in order to abandon the existing county-owned lift station that is partially located in the county right-of-way and partially located on the subject property, to install a new lift station within the boundary of the subject property. The existing zoning is changing to match the existing use and existing future land use. The existing future land use is public quasi-public that allows for public water, sewer, utilities, and public safety facilities. The proposed lift station is currently servicing the Howell Estates subdivision, Bennington subdivision, and San Pedro Spiritual Development Center. The improvements for the subject site will allow the county to maintain levels of service as outlined in the latest utility master plan. A community meeting for this project was held on March 10th, 2022, and approximately 7 people attended, and a copy of the community minutes and sign-in sheet are within your packet. Based on the preliminary aerial photo and county wetlands analysis map, it appears that there are 2,100 square feet of wetlands along the north portion of the subject property. The applicant will be required to maintain a 15-foot minimum, 25-foot average wetland buffer on site. Based on the preliminary analysis, there will be an endangered and threatened wildlife on the subject property that will be required at the time of site plan approval. The proposed PLI, Public Lands and Institutions zoning classification, is compatible with the proposed public use of the subject property and is consistent with the future land use of public quasi-public. Staff recommends the Board of County Commissioners adopt the proposed ordinance enacting a rezone from R1A to PLI, Public Lands and Institutions, on approximately 0.56 acres located northeast of Princess Gate Boulevard and Dyke Road.
Thank you. Is the applicant present?
Yes.
Do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I think that's it.
Okay. All right, thank you. Ian. Do we have any questions for staff?
I have one.
Oh, okay.
The right-of-way which you're encroaching on is not really going anywhere. It's not really a right-of-way. How come you just didn't abandon the right-of-way?
It didn't need to be required to be vacated. What's existing, the existing lift station is within.
I know that. Why didn't you just, I mean, why didn't you vacate the right-of-way? It's not doing anything. I don't think it will ever be built upon, right?
It wasn't required.
What do you mean?
The Environmental Services Department, they're moving that existing lift station onto the property. So therefore, it.
But if they vacated the right-of-way, they could have kept that lift station, maybe just made improvements to it and not gone through all this. I'm just curious.
Well, there is a few existing lots north of that that could get access off of that road that are not accessing off of, what is that, Manchester?
Okay.
Okay.
I think he has some questions from this room.
There's one lot, looks like, maybe one lot. Is there more than one going north, or wherever that's going?
There's a few lots, it looks
Okay.
like, to the north.
I'm fine, never mind.
Okay.
Any other questions for staff or applicant?
Did the adjacent houses, any of those owners have any concerns about a lift station being in the backyard?
Hi, Paul Zerman. I'm Chief Engineer, Environmental Services, Utility Engineering Division. We met with the neighborhood. We addressed most of their concerns. We talked about fencing and provided the slatted in the fencing to provide some buffer so they don't see it. We talked about access in and out and how it would affect their properties. So we had a good meeting, and I think we have one gentleman here was here. We got some good information from the neighborhood that knew how this all got to be in the first place.
Okay.
It's been going on for years. And as far as the right-of-way question earlier, that right-of-way is just our access road, and our lift station, we're just moving it within the property. So there was no actual encroachment of the lift station on the right-of-way, it was just the road access.
Okay.
This way, I have one, are you going to try to improve, or will it be the same size? Are you trying to increase flow with the lift station while you're
No,
doing the
it's
work?
just a straight-out replacement of an existing asset.
Kind of irrelevant, I was curious. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other question for staff or,
Do we need to make it part of the record that our fifth commissioner has joined us?
Oh, yeah.
Or is it understood?
It's
I
been
was late.
noted.
No, this commission.
oh, yeah, Tim, you showed up?
Late. Yes, sir. For the record.
For the record, Tim Smith has joined us. Thank you. We have one speaker, John?
John Horvath, the last name.
Yes, sir.
Have to forgive me, I have arthritis in my hand.
Okay, I was having a little trouble reading it.
Yeah, I
But thank you.
apologize. Hands are getting old, just like the machine here. John Horvath, 1004 Bradford Drive, that's in Howell Estates. I moved in there in '74, I was one of the first homeowners in there. And when I moved in, the utility system was a private utility known as Consumer Utilities. And like a lot of things, they met codes at that time, but the zoning and where the lift station was put, the county purchased the utilities a couple years later, and they've had it ever since. And of course, they've added on to it. I'm sure you've seen all the details on it. So you got to remember that lift station's been there since at least '73, and like everything else, it's aged. It's gotten parts that you probably can't get, because my dad used to be in the Grove business, and I know sometimes the truck got old, you couldn't find the parts. So it's probably going to help upgrade it, be a little more efficient, because motors or whatever they need will be more modern, meet new codes. And if we don't have it, we can't live in our houses and shower and whatever else we need to do. So it's part of what you have to do, just like I think you're reviewing land codes tonight. So like everything, what was allowed in '73 or '74 may not apply today, and so everything has to be updated and bring into current compliance with new rules and regulations. So that's all you're doing here, and I'm glad to see the county. I've been before the Board of County Commissioners for many years, and always screaming about at their budget time, got to maintain the infrastructure, whether it's roads, water, or sewer, and this is what I'm talking about, because if you don't have that, you can't have people living here. And as you know, we're all growing, and people are moving in like crazy. So they got to keep up with the old stuff and then make sure the new stuff is good too to run with too.
Good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Commission.
All right, any motion?
I move that we recommend that the Board of County Commissioners adopt the proposed ordinance enacting a rezone from R1A, single-family dwelling, to PLI, public lands and institutions, for .56 acres located on the northeast of Princess Gate Boulevard and Dyke Road.
Second.
Any board discussion? Call for a vote.
Aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And that closing business, planning manager's report.
Good evening. For the record, Mary Moskowitz, Planning and Development Services. After the conclusion of your meeting tonight, we will be having a work session on the Land Development Code. You guys went a little faster than I anticipated. So I would ask if the chairman could indulge and maybe do about a 15-minute recess to start the meeting at 6:30, because I do believe some members of the public will be arriving then.
Okay.
In the meantime, I would like to introduce some new staff members that we have. Sarah Sarah Hartung is our new natural resource officer. She comes to us from UCF, and you may see her around, poking around, looking at some trees on your property, but we're really excited to have her join us, so.
Maybe you can get those caterpillars, huh?
Natural.
So with that concludes my report.
Okay, thanks, Mary.
Thanks, Mary.
So let me go ahead and close, I guess I'll just close this meeting, and then we'll take a break for 15 minutes, and
Don't
then
go too far.
we'll get started. Sorry about that, I didn't mean, you didn't tell me to slow down.
allowing for accessory dwelling units.
back in, and we are ready to roll.
Okay, good evening. Once again, for the record, Mary Moskowitz, Planning and Development Services. I'm here this evening with other members of staff, including Rebecca Hammock, Development Services Director, Jeff Harper, Principal Planner, Doug Robinson, Principal Planner, and as previously introduced, Sarah Hodtang, our new Natural Resource Officer. This is a work session to discuss the Seminole County's efforts in preparing a land development code rewrite. A little note about tonight's hearing, presentation. We will begin with the Planning and Zoning Commission work session, and then once this work session is concluded, we will take a brief recess. You all are welcome to leave after that, and then we will begin the public input discussion portion of the work session. In mid-March, you all were emailed 2 documents. The first is the March 14th complete draft of the Land Development Code. And then a subsequent March 17th addendum was also emailed to you. Those 2 documents are also included in your agenda packages. With that, I will begin tonight's presentation, and as you can see, this is a brief agenda of what we will be talking about. First, I will begin with a history of the Land Development Code. The Seminole County Land Development Code is a collection of zoning, subdivisions, and other regulations that implement the policies of the Seminole County Comprehensive Plan. This code was first adopted in 1960. There were major updates to the code in 1973 and 1980. The most recent version was written in 2004. In 2009, staff initiated an effort to modernize the code. This effort has gone through several different revisions, but the main tenets of updating the language, providing for a targeted update to address previously identified topics of concern, and to modernize and reorganize the zoning regulation chapter in a way that is consistent with today's best planning policies. This revision was officially started in February of 2022. February of 2020. Although we have had several work sessions with the Board of County Commissioners and a work session with the Planning and Zoning Commission, this draft tonight is the first draft where all of the proposed amendments have been located in one place. Concurrently, we are also moving forward with the county's visioning effort that we are calling Envision Seminole 2045. This review of the comprehensive plan and the associated amendments may result in the need for additional land development code changes in the future. As I like to say, this isn't your first swing at the bat. So just a little walkthrough about the draft that you were presented. It's called a friendly draft. And so what does that mean is that the revisions were presented in a manual strike-through underline. If you see an item that was highlighted in gray, that means that it was something that was taken from the existing code in its entirety and not changed. And so if you see a section that may say, the implementing regulations highlighted in gray, there's a section number to that. So instead of copying that whole section verbatim into your document and making you read even more pages, that's just the same as what it is in the current code. If an item, and now the code, I think, in your copies that you got printed tonight is in black and white, but the email has some yellow highlights in it as well. Those yellow highlights are editorial comments. So they're not actually code changes that may say need reference here or refer back to an item. We did add line numbers in the code, and there was also that addendum that was prepared on the 17th. We are in the process right now of taking the addendum and putting it in with the 14th draft to complete one complete draft, and that copy will also have any changes that may come up tonight or some from some of our stakeholders as well. We know this isn't a perfect draft, and we know that there were some issues with there. For example, the tables aren't sequential, the numbering's a little bit off, the references need to be updated. If you read, I know you guys all read that bike parking section really carefully, you'll notice that it doesn't match up with the definitions in the parking standards. Those types of things will be updated in that final draft. So this is a list here of the topics that were previously discussed either at that Planning and Zoning Commission workshop or with the Board of County Commissioners. These include the solar updates, the civic assembly, and that's taking and making the religious uses standard. So we're taking any religious versus language out of those standards. We added some special use zones. The first one is the MUCD, which is the mixed use zoning district. This is that zoning district that corresponds with the MXD future land use designation that we currently don't have a zoning designation for. And then the other zoning district, that missing middle zoning district. We added the rural non-residential design standards, some parking standards, including the EV or electric vehicle parking, readiness standards, and parking garage standards, updates to our arbor regulations and tree preservations, some self-storage updates and some design standards for that. We added the updates to the setbacks on natural water bodies and truck parking in residential neighborhoods. So what's new? What haven't you seen yet? Probably the biggest change is the reorganization of the zoning chapter. So right now, zoning in the Land Development Code is Chapter 30, and it's to lack of a better term, a little hodgepodgey. And so this was an attempt to organize things in a consistent, concise manner. For example, we took all of the landscape, open space, and buffer requirements and put them together in one space. We also have a dimensional standards table, so instead of being in each individual zoning district, we have that all now in one place in a table. The same with the land use table. So in the current code, the land uses are what we call pyramiding, and so you go to one section. For example, if I go to the C2 section, it says all the uses permitted in the C2 plus a whole litany of these other uses. So that means then I have to go back to the C2, and then I have to go back to the CS. So now instead of doing that, everything now is on one table, which makes it a lot easier for us to read. Some other things that were updated that may not have been discussed, the mobile food vendor regulations. This was a requirement by state statutes, and so we just want to make sure that we are compliant with that. We added some language for construction hours. Right now, we didn't have anything, so they were exempt from our noise regulation. So this way, it allows people to have some noise standards for those construction hours. We updated our standards for outdoor lighting. Technology's changed. There's new LED lights, and so we wanted to be consistent with that. We also did do, as I previously alluded to, some additional updates to our open space regulations, really focusing on making the open space a usable open space. So some things that we heard back from our stakeholders right now, and we're in the process of amending, we're looking at the updates to our cluster subdivision regulations. We want to maybe amend that definition and standardize that and put some clarifications of those cluster subdivisions in the Wekiva River Protection Area. We did add some regulations for self-storage. We had listed that as a permitted use in the C1. We are changing that to a special exception in the C1, and then looking at those regulations in the industrial zoning, make sure that is it a commercial zone or is it an industrial zone, and where does that need to go as far as the industrial zoning district. Also in Chapter 40, we've updated our site plan submittal requirements. So now that you have to demonstrate that compliance with the performance standards, and those are things like I alluded to, the lighting requirements, the noise ordinances. So now prior to getting your site plan approval, you have to show that you are meeting those requirements. So what's going to happen next? On April 19th, we are going to have a work session with the Board of County Commissioners. After that, we will finalize that final draft. That draft will then come back to the Planning and Zoning Commission for their recommendation. It may also need to include some comp plan amendments. You guys know the drill. When we do a LDC change, it has to be consistent with the comp plan. So if there's some inconsistencies there, we need to make sure those comp plan amendments also come along as well. After the recommendation to the BCC, it will, from the Planning and Zoning Commission, it will go back to the Board of County Commissioners for their final adoption. So that was my brief overview of the process, kind of updating you, letting you know where we're at. I know you guys have read the whole thing and have lots of questions for that. So if you will indulge me for 1 second, I'm just going to go grab a sheet of paper so I can start writing things down too.
Okay.
And if you guys have any questions for me or other staff. Okay, so I'll just take questions at this
Do
point.
you want to do one commissioner at a time, or?
Yeah, I think that's probably going to be the easiest
Jim,
if you don't mind doing that.
You want to start at your end, or Bob, you want, let's start at your end.
Yeah, I've got some questions.
All right.
You want the line number, or?
Sure, that would be helpful, yeah.
Okay. Line 826, dealing with accessory dwelling units. You say they shall be rented or leased for a minimum period of 30 days. So I assume that's ruling out Airbnb type rental?
Yes, so that's the definition, that's existing language in our code.
Okay.
So, yes, so that's per state statutes, the 30 days is short-term renter versus, long-term renter.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't have a complaint. I was just clarifying that. I have a question on, well, it's 1362, but generally on solar power. If I built a 1,500 square foot house with solar panels and 2 Tesla batteries on water and septic tank, would I have to hook up to the power, the electrical utility?
That is outside of my wheelhouse, so I don't know the answer to that, so.
You guys know? Okay, I'm just, again, curious.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I
It
think
continues
that's
to
something
evolve.
that's going to evolve continuously as the solar power gets more efficient. And, but I don't know if you could go off grid and actually,
But
you
some
couldn't
states,
satisfy the building department.
some states you cannot get an occupational.
I mean, I can check
Permit.
with the building official tomorrow and ask him. That is not my
Okay. Well,
area
it's
of
not-
expertise.
Yeah.
Not-
I don't
and-
know.
I don't think you could get a CO without being tied to power. Now, whether you use it or not is a whole different story.
Well, then
but-
you still have to pay a hookup fee.
Yeah, but I don't think you get a CO without being tied to power.
All right, so stay in my lane, right? As you probably know, I'm interested in the missing middle. I like what you've come up with. I've compared it to a couple other counties like Volusia and Wildwood. And it looks good. Some other, I think Wildwood allowed tiny homes as small as 175 square feet. which-
Yeah, we're 450.
Yeah,
so.
which I think makes sense. One question for the missing middle. You said there cannot be gates into the neighborhood. Just kind of curious why.
So when you have a gated road, that makes the roads private, and so that incurs additional costs generally to the homeowners. So again, the idea with the missing middle is to have more affordable options. It
Right,
doesn't have to
right.
be an affordable house, but we want to give people the option of making it more affordable. So
Okay.
by not having private roads, it
Okay.
could make it more affordable.
Anybody else?
Oh, yeah, I would just let you go ahead and one at a time.
I had a
Go ahead.
curiosity, 54, it's the definition, professional breeder, but that's limited to?
I'm sorry, which number
It's
was?
54 on
Line 54.
line 54.
Okay, I
Let's see
thought,
if I
okay,
get this.
sorry. Making me go backwards here. Okay.
It's more of a curiosity, when we say breeder, that's limited to cats and dogs?
So this definition comes
Or
from our...
context, yeah.
Yeah, this came from our animal, we wanted to be consistent with the animal control regulations, and so I believe they were cats and dogs. There may also be ferrets in there as well, but I think that was taken out. So that's why we have this, are you talking about if I bred, like hamsters or something? We're not gonna...
No, I just, it's very limited, so,
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah, I think they took the ferrets out.
Okay.
All right, I have a couple of questions. First of all, just on line 2256, there's just a little spelling issue here. We have an area of 32,000. I'm not sure what 32,000 is.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the line number again?
2256. And I know it's supposed to be 32,000,
Okay.
but I just wanted to, so you could correct it. It says 32,000.
That's probably me. All right.
And leave it, I normally will not pick up spelling issues. My second is parking. I noticed these parking, we've always had this discussion up here, and the parking spots just seem to be getting a little bit smaller and a little bit smaller. And I guess I probably notice it because I drive a F-250 and an F-350, and I have trouble getting into these little spots. I saw the 80%, and I thought that might be a little bit strong as far as allowable, the reduced parking stalls could be up to 80% of a development. And I thought that was a little bit on the strong side.
Okay, we can certainly, I will go back, and that was the consultant's recommendation.
Yeah.
And it's generally based on when you have, and I'm not a parking expert, but my understanding is that if you have a low turnover situation, like an apartment building or something like that, where you're not coming in and out as often, that you can have that reduced number of sizes. But I can go back to them and verify where that came from, what that standard is.
Okay, all right, thank you. The other, and my major question, obviously being on the airport board of directors, I'm worried about height limitations. I didn't see anything really that I could find regarding towers.
Yes, so we are working right now, we are required by the state, I'm sure you're very aware of this, to have an airport zoning district, and so that will come to you as a separate land development code. We are working on those regulations right now.
Okay, all right.
So-
Now, is that going to be county-wide or just specific to a certain area within the airport's purview?
The way that it was written, it's based on the contours, and we worked closely with the Sanford Airport and the city of Sanford on what those contour areas would
Okay.
look like, so it's based on their master plan.
Okay, which we just got a brand-new one.
Correct,
Yeah.
and so it was a two-step process. The first step was to adopt the interlocal agreement, which we all signed, so the
Right.
city signed it, the airport signed it, we signed it. So now that that step has been completed, now we will come back with those land development code regulations. That is an effort that, again, we can do things outside of this effort, so that effort is outside of this land
Okay.
development code rewrite.
Okay, that's it for me. Yeah. Richard?
Okay, my issue, a couple of them, but one of them, the main one, is with the DRC and the new definition and what you've done here. I know you're trying to streamline, and I understand that, but on the other side of the coin, the DRC, for those of us in the development business, can actually be a very important meeting because we get a lot of feedback from various departments that, help us save money and time by when our next submission. And I know our development services director is excellent. She may not always be here, and you kind of made her queen here, but it's okay. I really think that saying here that you could have a range of county officials and so forth and so on be on the committee, I think you should go back and name them and require the building official, development review manager, planning and development division manager, natural resources officer, and maybe utilities or public service ought to be required to be on the DRC, because that's what we're looking for, feedback from those people. If the development service director says, well, I'm just going to have these 3 people, well, then we don't get a valuable meeting. We don't get any feedback.
Okay.
So I don't think that's so good. Oh, fire should be on there as well, because they always have comments. I mean, they end up reviewing our plans, and it'd be nice to have some of that stuff done at that development review committee rather than after we've already made mistakes on our plans. The other thing I didn't really like, you took it out, is And now, by the way, I don't see any vote here. The development, again, I'm okay with Rebecca making the decision, but at the same time, she may not always be here. So not having a vote of the DRC, I'm not sure I agree with that either, at least, from a feedback standpoint. The other thing is, you no longer have set meetings. It just, I guess, at the whim of whoever. I think it should be required to at least have a monthly meeting. If you don't have anything to come before it, you don't have the meeting. But it should be required, because then those of us on the development side know that, hey, the DRC is the third Monday of every month, and we have to have our stuff in, or we don't make that meeting, or we don't know when a meeting is. You don't have anything in here as a requirement. So that's the one thing I really bothers me. One other thing I just have a question about, let me find it. It's line 1494. Talks about setbacks shall be a minimum of 20 feet from the nearest edge of a sidewalk to a garage or carport. And that's for everything that's approved after the effective date. What about neo-traditional where the garage is in the rear? So does that, you get to move the house forward more than 20 feet, or are you still stuck at 20 feet? Some of the stuff with.
Yes, so
I didn't see anywhere in here you had dealt with rear load. Is there?
yeah, and again, in Seminole County, we generally don't have rear loaded property, but if a property was to be rear loaded, the area in the back would also need to maintain that 20-foot setback.
Well, but yeah, but sometimes in Orange County and stuff, sometimes you can move the house further forward.
Yes, so that would be in, and so that the more neo-traditional, new urbanist design standards, those are our mixed-use standards, and that does refer to that building.
It does. I guess I didn't get that far.
Yeah,
So thanks.
it's another standard in there. So, but this is just a measurement, for those of us who have vehicles, to make sure that there is enough space on the property to park the vehicle.
Okay, and my last thing is back at around 642, when you're dealing with C1 retail commercial district. I'm just curious, where did you, allowing some residential within that district, where'd you come up with moving the 10 to 20%? Just curious.
So we did some studies to see just kind of land use. When I say study, like we took a piece of property and said, how much could you realistically get in here? And when you did 10%, that wasn't a valuable number to generate a mixed-use product. And so really with that 20%, you're getting, if you look
Okay.
at some of those, we did, what was it, the Griffin Farms and some of those other mixed-use products, and we found that it was around that 20% range.
Got it. Okay, that's about all I got. Overall, my compliments. I think you guys did a good job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mr. Lopez did.
No questions from this. My first go-around with this. I'm just sort of absorbing as I'm listening to
Well,
comments.
and yes, again, this is, the first time anybody's really had that opportunity to look at the complete draft. And so this is exactly, we wanted this feedback and we value that. So, if you do have additional feedback, please send that to me. It is helpful if you do include that line number, just so I can go back to it.
Now, I've got one follow-up question. I know you had brought up cluster developments on the screen.
Yes.
And so you specifically went over to the Wekiva protection area. What about the rural boundary area as far as the cluster development?
As far as
Are you going to
the
apply
updating.
what's applied over there to the rural boundary also?
So there's provisions in the code already on the how to allow clustering or what could do to allow clustering. So there may be some language for that as well. I don't, Rebecca, I'm gonna toss this one out here to Rebecca, hand it over.
Yeah, because I'm really curious of where we come up, who defined cluster? That's my main concern, is who defined it and how did you define what a cluster is?
Sure. For the record, Rebecca Hammock, Development Services Director. So as Mary stated, there's different sections of the county that have different, like you have the rural area that allows clustering, you have the East Lake Sylvan transitional area within the Wekiva River Protection Area that allows clustering. We also allow clustering within planned developments. So there's different rules depending on what area of the county. We also have the Myrtle Street Conservation Village overlay, which allows clustering. And so each one has slightly different clustering parameters, but we did notice a specific issue with the East Lake Sylvan transitional area, so we are going to, I guess, beef up that criteria to standardize it and to actually be able to give staff some regulation to go by if there is a proposed development in the area. And then we're also amending the definition of a cluster subdivision, which would apply to all types of clustered subdivisions, depending on, no matter where they're located within the county.
Yeah, because we're going to run into that in the rural boundary.
Correct. In the rural boundary, within the comprehensive plan and within the land development code, it has specific regulation related to the cluster subdivisions. But I think by us amending the definition, it'll help make some clarification.
Where do you go to get an actual definition on the term clustering?
So
how is it defined? Is it an architectural digest or?
Well, we actually reference the American Planning Association as well as some, other code regulations. And, it talks about, and one of the other things we're looking at is for the East Lake Sylvan transitional area specifically is requiring a minimum amount of open space, whereas it didn't have that before. And like the East Lake Sylvan, the Myrtle Street Conservation Village overlay had a 50% open space requirement. And then, like Mary said in her presentation, we're also updating our open space section to specifically say this is what's required for open space. If you count your retention pond towards open space, you have to have these amenities. It has to have this, I believe we have a 5-to-1 slope. So, so you can't just use a drain, a square drainage or retention pond with steep slopes as an amenity when really it's not, common usable open space.
Okay.
So we're hoping with those things it will improve that issue.
Yeah, I think it needs to improve, but it also needs to protect at the same time. And I think that's going to be the main concern of the citizens, is to make sure that clustering is used properly in its context. Yeah.
Right. We had heard concerns from some of the stakeholders that in the past the clustering wasn't a true cluster subdivision.
Right.
So our hope is with these edits that, in the future, it would be true clustering.
It'll sure help us out a lot.
Yep.
Okay, well, thank you. I
Thank you.
appreciate that. If we're all done.
I have one quick question.
Yeah.
I promise that'll be it. 4436, do we really need a building permit to repair or replace a fence?
Yes, if it's 50% or more, I believe, which, 44,
What was the number?
4436.
yes, that is, it just,
Why?
well, one thing is sometimes
Revenue.
the fences were not put in the right location to begin with, so this is our opportunity to look at that. And the other thing is that we do want to make sure that the fences are installed properly for, hurricane, building safety, life safety issues. So even if you're just repairing a panel, you don't, but if you are doing a major repair, I thought there was a limit in there, and I apologize, I thought
More than 10%.
more than 10%, yeah.
Because I know as a homeowner, that's really annoying, and it just seems to be a way for the government to make more money when I'm just repairing, 100 feet of fence that have been there for 20 years.
We try to make it as painless as possible. You can do it over the counter, and we try to do that. You generally do a fence permit in one day.
Will there actually be a final inspection on that?
I don't speak for the building
Okay.
department.
I'm sure there
I would
will be.
promise you
I'm
the
sure there
zoning
will be, I
review will be
promise.
quick and painless.
You promised that, huh?
Yes. My people are quick. So are there any other questions from the board? So what I would ask to do then is we're going to then close the work session. You're welcome to stay if you want, but if you can give us, we're going to do like a 5-minute recess to reset, and then we can open it up for the public.
Mary, one last thing. So if we could just email you. You've got a couple more
Absolutely,
comments.
yes. You email me,
Okay.
email Jeff, email Rebecca, you know how to find us.
Yeah.
So,
All right.
yeah.
Officially close the work session.
Thank you, guys.